look at the review, you're going to notice that down below here, and this is kind of for both groups, and I put it on both days, I put a Quizlet with equation practice, so it's just more practice of more equations. Now, if you're kind of behind, you probably don't want to go to that, right? Because you're just trying to get everything through C14 done so that you can turn in your whole workbook when we take our test, okay? You're going to turn this in regardless, and that's how I'm going to see and check your work. Here's one with literal equations, and some of them are ones that we don't really get into solving. And then I just put more practice. So those are all just other websites that you could go to, and I didn't put them in Google Classroom. When you guys come in Wednesday, we're taking the Unit C test. And then on Friday is you're not in school. Both of you will be working on D1. Is there anyone last week that did not get the 2 new workbooks, D and E, that you were not here last week? Questions, there's actually going to be 12 questions. Oh, the points. I'm going to have to look at that in a few minutes for you. So our test for this class is this Wednesday. The other group is going to be Thursday. And I'll look for the number of points. So there's actually 1 through 8 to solve multi-step equations, including literal equations. We actually have 8 of those. And what I mean by those is those 8 questions, 1 to 8. When you're looking at the questions 1 to 8, you might have an integer, which are the nice ones, right? Those are like our positive and negative whole numbers, integer answers. Okay? But you are also going to see a lot more of decimals answers, right? We've been doing a lot of fraction answers. You might have, so besides integer, decimal, and fraction, you might have all real numbers. Does anyone remember when we have all real numbers, what's the case? What had to happen to get all real numbers? Anyone remember our all real numbers? It kind of something special happened. Like I had 0 equals 0. Or 4 equals 4, right? That's when we have a true statement. So, all real numbers, if you solve something, we're on page 34. As we look at this, you might have a true statement and you're going to tell me all real numbers. But you might also have in these first 8 questions, no solution. Now, I just told you what happens to get all real numbers. Okay, so what would you say is going to happen if we have no solution?
Variable equals variable.
Nope, not a variable equals variable. Anyone else remember? To get it to be a no solution, what has to happen in when you solve the problem? Because if I get a variable equal a variable, I can move the variables and get the variable equal to like 0.
The only thing you can divide is divided by itself and you get nothing.
Nope, not necessarily. Not necessarily that. So when you solved these, you got rid of the variables and you had a number equal to number and it was true. In this case, this is when you're going to have a false statement. So you might have had the same variables on the same side, but it came out to equal -2 equals 2. False statement, right? 4 equals 0. False statement, right? So anytime you are solving and it comes out and the variables cancel. So in both of these cases, you're going to have the variables cancel. What do I mean by the variables cancel? You subtract like you have something like 2x minus 3 equals 2x plus 7, right? So the variable is exactly the same on both sides. And when I subtract 2x, I got -3 equals 7. And I knew that was false, which meant I had no solution. So that's what you got to kind of keep in mind. So that's going to be in questions 1 to 8. Then, question 9 and 10. And I think you guys all have enough room because I kind of wrote mine going down on my paper as I was looking at this. Question 9 and question 10 on the test are going to be a multiple choice. And when I think of that multiple choice, you can actually choose more than one, okay? So you might be able to choose 2 of the A, B, or C. You could choose 1 or more. And when you're choosing that, this is again going to be all about the all real numbers and no solution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an equation, kind of like this one right here. And I'm going to give you 3 different equations that kind of look like this. And I'm going to say, so of these 3, if you were going to solve them, which ones would give you all real numbers? Well, this one definitely would not. So I would not want to choose this one, right? But if I had 2 other ones and they came out that the variables were that everything was the same on both sides, I would go, yeah, that's going to be the all real numbers. This would have been one of my selections for no solution, right? So it's going to be a multiple choice question, and you're going to be asked to do that. The next question, question number 11, is kind of like on the quiz where you were asked to simplify. When I think of simplifying, simplify means I'm going to use the distributive property. So I'm going to use the distributive property and add like terms. There is no solving in this problem. And so that's what I often have students make mistakes on, is they think that we are solving this. And by the way, the number of points is 44 points I was just looking at. Now, of those 44 points, what I'm going to be doing is that goes in as 100%, right? So tests are out of 100, not out of like the 40. So we've had tests A1, A2, the volume, we've had B, and now we're on to C. And question number 12, the last question on the test, I'm going to ask you to explain what are your steps to solve. What does that mean, explain your steps to solve? So I might give you an equation like this one you saw up here. And I would say your first step is to do this, and then the second step. And it's going to be a multiple choice, so you'll get to choose. But I'm going to ask you, what are your steps in solving? So that if I was looking at today's homework quiz, today's homework quiz on C14 that you were supposed to have taken, I want to look at the fraction mark. So there's going to be 2 bonus questions on the test after you finish the 1 to 12. And if you really want to do those last ones, you could. It's going to be question 13 and 14. They ask you to fix something. They ask you if this is done correctly and to come up with a number. So 13 and 14 are going to be optional ones. That's kind of when we were originally, kind of before everything went crazy this fall. This is when we were looking at using standard-based grading. This would have been a level 4 question. So it's kind of like, are you at above the standard kind of as you are looking at that, okay? How does, again, when you have these fractional problems is, fractions just cause many of you angst. They cause you problems. So thinking of 1K, 1K is really over, Jack, what denominator? It's 1. What could I put in the denominator if there's no number there originally? How can I write 1 as a fraction? 1 over 1. So now I look at my denominators, Isaiah, and I'm like, I want to not have any fractions. What would I think of multiplying everything by? 6. Because I have 3 and 6. 6 is the biggest, and 3 goes into 6. So I'm like, okay, I am thinking of taking everything by 6. So Peyton, start me out. I'm going to have 6 over 1 times a 2/3, right? Now what? Minus 6 over 1. Now, yep, keep going. Times what?
Times 1.
Yeah. Does this one really have to be over 1 for looking at it? Maybe not. Channing, keep me going if we're multiplying this.
Equals 6 over 1 and 5 6. And then minus 6 over 1 and 0.
All right. So now we're doing some simplifying, right? So Michael, if we're simplifying, how would you simplify the first one? Do you want to multiply top times top and then divide, or how do you want to do it? Okay. 6 times 2 gives us, divided by 12 divided by 3 is 4. Oh, Mrs. Thompson, I didn't do it that way. I did it this way. Is that the same thing? Am I still going to get 4? Yep. Minus, if I'm simplifying that next one, well, there's nothing to simplify, right? It is just minus 6k. Jeannie, if I'm simplifying here?
You cross out 6 and 6 and then I'll turn to 1 and then you do that times 5 and divide.
Yeah, someone else knows. I thought of it as 30 divided by 6. 30 divided by 6 is still 5, right? So if we're looking at that. Connor, this last one, how am I going to simplify?
6 minus 3.
Okay, 6 and 3. 3 goes in here once. How many times does 3 go into 6? 2. So I have minus 2k. Noah, I need to get all my variables on one side. So what do you want to do now to get all the variables on one side? Not yet, because my variables have to all be on one side of the equal sign. And I have 4 minus 6k equals 5 minus 2k. How do I get all the k's on either the left side or the right side? What could I do if I... Parker, I'm going to end up with what back here? 4... Negative 6 plus 2 gives us, if I take negative 6k plus 2k, what do I end up with? Negative 4k. Here I get 5, and I have this 0. We don't really have to put the 0, okay? Isaiah, we're going to continue. What do I need to do next now to get my negative 4k by itself?
Plus 4.
I'm going to... I could have 4k, but I'm going to leave that negative 4k right where it's at.
Okay. So
I want to keep this here, but I have to get rid of this 4. How?
minus 4.
Minus 4. Jack, as I've minus 4 from both sides, I'm left with what?
Negative 4k equals 1.
And my last step is paid to do what? Five. Which one? Negative 4. Okay. So on the quiz, it asks you for the decimal, right? So on the test on Wednesday, could you leave it like this? Yes. Could you tell me negative 0.25 when you divide that? Yes, that would be correct also as you were taking it. On the C14, that second part, either do the right or left-hand column. You want to do all of C14. The remainder time today in class is finishing C13, and you can show that to me if you finish. And what I'm talking about is both the 13 and this joke one with this cryptic quiz that you were doing. And if you finish both of those, and you're working on C14, or you got a good portion of C14 done, you could show me that so that I could mark that off. You need to make sure you bring your workbook with you to class.